Welcome to Pizza Quest. I'm Peter Reinhardt, and today I'm joined by Chef Mike Friedman, who is, as we were just discussing, I think, beginning to build his empire in the Washington, D.C. area. Well, I think goes far down as what Bethesda and D.C. and more recently getting into pizza, which is a perfect tie-in to Pizza Quest. Mike, we don't always talk only about pizza, and your story kind of, well, you grew up in pizza world in the New York area. Why don't you just kind of give us a little bit of your backstory? Tell us how you got into it and how you got to where you kind of came full circle through fine dining back to pizza. And by the way, welcome to Pizza Quest. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure, and thank you for having me on. I'm very humbled and big fan of the show, big fan of your books, Peter, and I just really appreciate you taking the time to pick me out of the amazingly large pool of very talented pizza makers around the country and the world. So, yeah, I am a New Jersey and New York native. My father grew up in the Bronx. I was born in Manhattan, and my mom is from Elizabeth, New Jersey, and then we ended up moving out to Westfield, New Jersey, which is a town I like to call in central New Jersey. A lot of New Jerseyans don't really believe that there's a central Jersey, but very much is, with its own kind of some really cool regional foods and dialects even. But I grew up in a Jewish household within an Italian community. Westfield at the time when I was growing up was very Italian. The main streets were, Italian bakeries, Italian delis, Italian restaurants and trattorias, and, most importantly, pizzerias.
Yeah.
And so as a kid, as a Jewish kid with a Jewish dad from the Bronx, Friday night was either pizza night or Chinese food night.
That's right. I was going to say, you're checking off all the boxes for the prerequisites to become a chef.
It's true. And honestly, I wish I could give you a story of sitting on the counter and watching my grandmother roll out pasta or roll out, matzo balls, or be in the kitchen with my mom or my relatives and being a part of it. But I was too busy playing hockey or getting into trouble with my friends, or, my brother was beating me up, or, just kind of wandering and learning about life. It was never a path that as a young man I thought that I was going to go down. When I was 15, I realized I could work and make my own money. And so I got a gig at a deli that my buddies were working at called Duke's Deli. It's right across the train station in south part of Westfield. And I slinged sandwiches. I worked the flat top and made cheesesteaks. And it was an amazing experience for a 15-year-old kid to be part of that subculture that we all know of restaurants, right? Like, let alone Italian restaurants or pizzerias. It was a deep dive for me very quickly into how amazing restaurant people can be, and how I think fulfilling it can be. And there was a lot of ways that it was satisfying. One, I got to work with my buddies, and we got to make sandwiches and have a good time and laugh.
And get a paycheck every week.
I mean, I got paid under the table. I can say that now because there's a statute of limitations, but I got paid $6 an hour under the table, and I had an old cigar box full of cash in my room, and I thought I was king of the castle.
Exactly.
And a lot of different things. It was a wooden walk-in in there, one of those old wooden boxes, and there was a bottle of Goldschlager that was always sitting on the top that kept getting emptied as the day would go on.
Yeah.
One of the co-owners was smoking cigarettes in the place, Virginia Slims of all things. And so there was this, it was very much this like amazing experience. And it was a family run place. And the grandmother would make all the coleslaw, egg salad, tuna salad, rice pudding. There was a gentleman in a, tuxedo, not a tuxedo, like a suit that would come in once a month that we would just fill a box of food and chips, and he would never pay. And I don't know if he was mafia or not. I mean, like, there were all these experiences that happened.
Little did you know that he was protecting the whole place.
I mean, and he could have been. I mean, that's the craziest part. So from there, I left for college. I went to Boston University and kind of left the food business behind. I was interested in going to college in general. I didn't have a path yet. I ended up getting a degree in communications with a focus in marketing, PR, and advertising with a minor in American history.
Wow.
And
Did you go to the School of Public Communications at Boston University?
yes, so I went to
That's
Com.
where I went. That's
Oh,
where I went to college as well, but
get out
probably
of
10
town.
years before you. Yeah,
Oh
I
my
was in
gosh.
what we call it SPC, the School of Public
SPC. So
Communications.
yeah, now
Yeah.
it's Com, the College of Optional Math. Um,
College of
but
Optional what?
College of Optional Math. All the comp
Math? Really?
majors were terrible at math, but
Optional math.
it was
Well,
yeah,
but yeah, it's so funny that that your journey sort of parallels that part of my life as well.
that's
Um,
awesome. And I loved being in Boston and I loved being in New England. I spent my summers in Maine as a camp counselor. I did odd jobs in college for, catering, but more in the service side of things. I scooped ice cream at JP Licks on Newberry Street.
wow. It's around
Yeah.
the corner from where my first restaurant was. My restaurant was I'm talking about 1971.
Oh,
I had a little
wow.
co-op restaurant with a bunch of hippies. Boston's first organic vegetarian restaurant called Route One Cafe, spelled ROOT, Route One Cafe.
Cool.
Our sign was a giant carrot, and it was
Oh
right
my
on
gosh.
Right on Mass Ave at Beacon Street. So we were just
Oh
three
yeah,
blocks.
right there.
Yeah, and you
Right
were on
there.
Newberry, so you would at the end of Newberry, closer to like Berkeley School of Music, or
Exactly. No,
yeah.
it was closer to Berkeley.
So
Yeah.
so we were like 3 or 4 blocks apart.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy. That whole area has changed so massively since I even graduated in '03. But yeah, I mean, I went on that path. I graduated college. My father's career was selling television airtime, and I needed a gig, and I couldn't make ends meet by scooping ice cream. So through friends of his, I got a job working at WBZ Radio selling radio airtime,
Oh, uh-huh.
and I absolutely hated it. It wasn't for me. I was 21. I was still
Yeah.
living in a college apartment, and I kind of did a quick 8 or 9 months there. I left. I moved down here to DC. My parents had moved here in 2000, and so I was living in the apartment with them. And my dad
Oh,
said, "If you're going to be here, you got to get a job. You got to make money." And so the story goes that I was living in their second bedroom, and this was really pre like internet and pre phones, like smartphones. And my mom loved cooking, loved cookbooks, which I've shared affinity with. And I just started reading cookbooks at night because I was stressed. I wanted to get my mind off of kind of the heaviness of being a 21-year-old without any responsibility whatsoever.
right.
Looking back, and then I might as well punched myself, but. I loved the idea of I loved these cookbooks. I loved the creativity in them. And I said to myself at 21, I said, look, why don't you give it one more shot? Maybe restaurants are for you, maybe they're not. I got a gig through a friend of a family friend at a restaurant called Mon Ami Gabi, actually in Bethesda, Maryland. So part of the Lettuce
Wow.
Entertain You crew.
Oh,
And
really? So yeah, that's right. Because your sort of gateway in was through the Let Us Entertain Me
it
group.
was my professional career started with an amazing company in Lettuce Entertain You. And from day one, I loved it. Again, I think that restaurants offer an environment that are very different from anything else in any industry. I think that it's such a great place to be, especially as a young, impressionable kid that wanted to learn, that was willing to work off the clock and, learn how to use a knife, learn how to make compound
Exactly.
butters, cut vegetables, pound out meats, make sauces. I ended up working pastry station, and I worked really diligently for a lot of years with Mon Ami Gabi. I made enough money to go to culinary school, which the company urged me to do. I kind of wanted to stay on the career path with lettuce, but they said, "Hey, go to culinary school. You need to. It's the best way to do it." And so I did, and I went to CIA up in Hyde Park,
Yeah.
and did time at the Modern in New York while I was there. I worked.
Did you enjoy your time at the Culinary Institute? I mean, was it
I absolutely loved it. I couldn't say better things about it.
such an amazing place? So breathtakingly beautiful,
What
but
a
also
wild environment when you think
yeah,
about it, right? Like
yeah,
there is never a point on that campus when food is not being prepared.
right.
It's amazing, right? Like my breakfast cookery class started at 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, how cool is that? And
Yeah.
you do theory and philosophy for 3 hours. Then you start prepping, and at 6 a.m. the kitchen's open up for the early morning workers, and then the students that have their 7 a.m. classes. And it's just, the restaurants close down at 1 a.m. When kids are leaving,
Yeah.
and stocks are bubbling as you walk out the door. It's just, and since I've left there, I left there in '07. There's a brewery on campus. I mean, like, they built a whole new recreational facility. I mean, the things that they do, it's basically Hogwarts for
Yeah,
cooks. It
exactly.
literally
Yeah.
is. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
And it's changed so many lives. And the story that you're telling, your own, I'll call it the journey of self-discovery, because that's what we think of
Sure.
Pizza Quest as being a really an exploration of our self-discovery through pizza. But that journey is parallels so many other people who, again, not exactly sure what their direction in life was going to be, and they found it through food. And then they
Sure.
found the training, and through your school. I teach at Johnson and Wales. We have similar,
That's
sort of,
awesome. Yeah, Johnson
offers.
Wells is great, is a amazing, reputable place, and nothing but love for education. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned, that, kind of leapfrogging into the future here, is my job has really turned out to be a self-discovery of teaching. And that
Oh,
ability is so satisfying, and it gives such self-worth. I absolutely love it. And I've been able to meet a lot of great teachers along the way,
yeah.
as I continue to work, including Jose Andres, who I joined right after culinary school, and worked with Think Food Group for many years, and loved working for Jose. Very powerful, passionate, larger than life human. I worked with him at Zaytinya, or for him at Zaytinya and Haleo. I did a lot of offsite projects with him. And at the time when I was working for Jose, my dad got sick, and my dad got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer,
Oh boy.
and had a very short battle and passed away. And it was an opportunity for me to kind of get lost in cooking, right? And really, I just worked 16-hour, 18-hour days sometimes. I mean,
Uh-huh.
they had to kick me out. And that in a way propelled my career heavily, because I dove so deeply into it.
Yeah.
And it was a great experience in that way of self-healing as well. And
Yes.
I was able to, work through things and help my mom out, and kind of find myself again on this next journey. And then
It's growth and therapy all at the same time.
it really is. I mean, it really is. And again, like, there's so many things that kitchens can give other than food. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I uh, I worked for Jose for until about 2010. I joined a smaller company called a restaurant called Proof, that was amazing in wine, charcuterie, and seasonal cooking with Hyder Karoum.
Mm.
Did that for 2 years, and I say, when I was young enough and dumb enough, I signed my own lease, and I signed my lease at 29 for the Red Hen, and the Red Hen was about getting back to a neighborhood restaurant, and getting
Yeah.
back to just like, no, like, cooking with guts, as my buddy Chris Cosentino would say. And at the time in the industry, there was a lot of sous vide going on. There was a lot of
Uh,
theme restaurants going on, and I wanted to produce something for a neighborhood in DC that was their own. It was a neighborhood restaurant. We were going to utilize mid-Atlantic ingredients and cook them in
mhm.
an Italian vein, and that's what Red Hen was. We had a great wine list open up, wonderful hospitality. I joined forces with my buddy Mike O'Malley, who I was a manager with at Mon Ami Gabi when I first started. We stayed friends. He went
Yes.
off to get his MBA at DePaul. I went to get my degree at CIA. He worked for
Interesting.
restaurants in Vegas. I worked in New York, and we joined forces to open up the Red Hen.
So
And it
basically, you
was,
guys both had your roots in a sense in Let Us Entertain You,
yes,
in different parts of the aisle, so to speak, and then rejoined and now formed your own company.
yeah. And with Let Us Entertain You, they're successful because of systems, and the systems are what have made us successful in our little company. And Red Hen, I like to say, is a systematic corporate style restaurant masked in an independent neighborhood joint.
That's
And
interesting.
yeah, it's one of those things where we have fail safes everywhere, we have systems
Yes.
everywhere, but it feels so intuitive and organic in the space, as it should. And
Well,
Red,
what you're speaking to there, I just want to comment on is
sure.
that you're talking about structure, having it's a very strong infrastructure, which not everybody thinks about when they either go to dine or think about opening a restaurant. They don't realize how important that is. But I think what you pointed out is something like Let Us Entertain You, which is a extremely successful restaurant group based in Chicago that has dozens of different concepts that they're managing. It starts with that structure, with the foundation and structure. And so that was a pretty valuable lesson that you learned working for them.
Oh yeah, and if you couple that with my time working for Union Square Hospitality and how you treat employees and
That's
how
Danny Meyer's group.
yes,
So you
yes,
worked for them as well. My
I
God,
worked at the Modern, yeah,
you're
in the
talking
new.
about checking off the boxes, man. You're getting your bona fides, as they say.
It's yeah, I was able to I was lucky enough to be able to get into a lot of great companies and a lot of great restaurants and learn a lot um, from a lot of great people. And you know, that employee first mentality,
Yeah.
it's the real deal. It's not smoke that we're blowing. We treat our employees as best as we can and as the most important part. And you know, this idea of rested workers are happy workers and happy workers are harder workers is a real thing. And so we focus on work quality life and have since day one, and or have since day one. And it's paid off. I've got people that have worked at Red Hen for 10 years since we've started. I've got people that started
How
as a
many
busser
restaurants?
that
How
are
many
now.
restaurants do you now have in the group, in your restaurant group?
I have 5.
That's a lot to pull together in the few short years since you've left culinary school. You've
Yeah,
been on a fast track. It's pretty amazing.
I have, and for better or worse, I think that it's important to grow slow and bring people in. You know, 4 heads are better than 2, and so on and so forth. And then getting people in that care about the product, care about the culture,
Yeah.
care about the community, and then paying them well, giving them a great work-life balance.
Yeah.
The restaurant industry for people that want it to be career can be very worthwhile and very satisfying, and it can be a lifelong journey of exploration, as we've talked about, and knowledge. And I think the best people out there are the ones that are still learning. I read about Daniel Boulud saying all the time that he still is learning at
Yeah.
his success rate and age. So I emulate those things. And Red Hen opened up. It was very successful. And one of our brokers came to us and said, "Hey, there's a hole in the ground at 9th and N, and they're building a new building. And are you interested in looking at it?" And we were like, "Oh my God, growth! What does that look like?"
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
barely getting our heads above water with Red Hen. And I think the building was, a year out from being delivered. And so we were interested. And I was sitting at the bar at Red Hen after service one night, just filling out lists and talking to Mike, my business partner. And Mike and I, when we both worked in DC, or in Bethesda, I apologize, we would go out on our days off together and we would go to a restaurant called Two Amy's. And Two
Oh,
Amy's
I
is
remember. Yeah.
stands Neapolitan restaurant. I think it's been there for over 20 years or something
Yeah. They
like that.
really brought Neapolitan pizza to DC, I think.
100%. And they
Yeah.
still crush. I mean, they're still the best out there. And I give nothing but a huge amount of credit to Peter for really being at the forefront of Italian cuisine here as well.
Mhm.
But yeah, Two Amy's, Pizzeria Paradiso,
Yeah.
kind of pioneers in this area of pizza. And Mike and I would get all the things on the menu that we could. We'd probably order 2 or 3 bottles of wine that were in our early 20s and didn't, we
Yeah.
were just looking to get hammered and
It's
have a good
your
time.
R&D work.
It was, yeah, I mean, even though we didn't know about it then. So I was sitting with Mike late night and I was like, what if we did pizza? And a kind of a light bulb went off in both of our heads because we had that connection. And then we started thinking about the connection that, I certainly had as a kid growing up in Jersey, going to pizzerias, riding my bike and meeting my buddies at Ferraro's or Cosmos, or getting in that car with my dad to pick up a pizza from, the local spot and having it sit on my lap and smell that, nostalgic smell and
Yes.
flavor that you can't wait to open up that box. And it's almost it's it's a test to
It's
see if you
amazing
can
how
make it all.
powerful those taste memories and aroma memories are.
There's
Because
no
when
doubt.
you encounter them again, it can be 30 years later, it just brings
Yeah.
you back.
And I live in that world. I live in the world of nostalgia, especially with all purpose. But even Red Hen, I mean, there's touches of my youth that people connect to. And even at Aventino, people, with the Roman cuisine that we do there. But
So wait, so you mentioned a couple restaurants that we haven't talked about. So Aventino came along more recently, right? That's
correct.
the
Yeah.
Roman
Aventino, we
style
opened up
restaurant. Yeah.
5 weeks
But
ago.
but the one at Ninth and then is that AP or is that
That's the original all purpose. Yeah. That's the
all
original
purpose?
AP.
It's AP all
And
purpose. Yeah.
yeah, so we came up with the name. Obviously, it has a lean toward the flour,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
of all-purpose flour. But the other idea was that it was for everybody. It's an all-purpose restaurant, and we built a great little gem there. And this was 2014, I think we opened, 2015, and everybody was doing Neapolitan in town,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we wanted to do deck oven. Nobody else was doing deck oven pies, and so it took me about a year to develop the dough recipe. And for someone that had never made pizza professionally prior, it was an undertaking, and a really fun one. And I ended up doing a dough that um, is a 3-day cold ferment dough. It's 40% whole wheat. It's got diastatic malt powder in it, lots of olive oil, about a 70% hydration,
Wow.
and just a
Did you
really,
say
really
40% whole wheat flour?
40% whole
That's a
wheat
pretty
flour.
high percentage of whole
It
flour.
is. It's
Yeah.
higher. It's and a higher percentage than most pizza doughs.
Yeah, yeah, very much so. And and so you're sort of blending the best of the Neapolitan traditions with a little bit of current thinking.
Exactly. Yeah. And, in terms of the fermentation time being a lot longer than a lot of
Yeah,
Neapolitan, we
yeah.
start with a biga as well. So there's a biga that goes into the fresh ferment, and then
Did it
gets,
take you a long time to kind of hone in the formula that you ended up using?
yeah,
Or how
it
did you get
did,
there?
and there was a lot of failure, I would say, along the way. And then there was a lot of success. And then we had to move into the space because I was just testing on a pizza stone in a South Bend convection oven at Red
Yeah.
Hen. And then we had to go in and work in baker's prides and had to redevelop the entire recipe and tweak it. And, and then, some of the flour changed because right now we're utilizing Central Mills, high gluten whole wheat flour.
Yes, good stuff.
Utilize the King Arthur, 00, and then a little bit of King Arthur AP flour.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
it's predominantly the 00 mixed with that 40% of whole wheat and then a small percentage of the AP, just to kind of balance out the protein content. Olive oil, salt, water, diastatic malt powder I found was awesome because it aids in yeast development and caramelization without giving weight to the dough.
Yeah, yeah.
So I really
That gets
enjoyed
you
that.
like a really nice golden brown.
Yeah, and that's what we were going for, right? Like I was always chasing the nostalgic flavor,
Uh-huh.
while also giving people an opportunity to have a great experience without busting their gut, so to speak. Right? Like a 3-day cold fermented 12-inch pizza, you could pretty much take down if you're pretty hungry. And then apart from the dough, we really wanted to focus on chasing that nostalgic tomato sauce flavor. We landed on Bianco di Napoli tomatoes back in 2015. And I was contacting the company because they hadn't brought it to the East Coast yet. And
It's
so
so funny because when they first, made it available, it was so hard to get your hands on it. We did the same
I mean,
thing down
I
in Charlotte
called
where I
Bianco di
am.
Napoli. I spoke to an awesome lady. I can't remember her name, but I had to ship pallets to myself.
Yes, yes. And we did
And
the same thing down here. And now I'm finding Bianco di Napoli tomatoes in world markets. I mean, it's
you
actually
get on Amazon. You get on Amazon. I mean, what can't you get on Amazon these days? I don't know.
That's true. Yeah,
But really high quality, so the Bianco di Napoli tomato sauce, we just buzz with Sicilian oregano and sea salt. That's the sauce. And then we utilize Galvani mozzarella from upstate New York, high quality, low moisture, whole milk, not lots of good tang. And then everything else is just high quality. And so
I find it interesting that, in the midst of this whole Neapolitan, boom, that you kind of went a different direction. So many of the folks who are doing Neapolitan are really want to be able to import their ingredients from Italy. They feel it's so important to be using San Marzano tomatoes and mozzarella brought over, et cetera, et cetera. And uh, and you went the other way. You're kind of, again, in a way, sort of retro and modern at the same time.
Yeah, and much love to the Neapolitan movement. I love it. I love it. I mean, I love pizza, maybe not as much as you, but I love it so much. And I don't think that there's I'm not a pizza snob. I think that there's great pizza
Yeah,
everywhere.
yeah.
Even the shitty pizza is great pizza. I love pizza. I wanted a pizza that emulated my youth and was a love
Yes.
letter to my youth.
I think that's the key, is that you were going for something, not just a product. You were going for to capture a memory.
Exactly. And we've done that. And apart from that, we have great little antipasti at all the restaurants. And then AP River came next. We're right across from the Nationals ballpark. And then we did an offshoot of the brand next to Aventino that we opened up about 5 weeks ago called AP Pizza Shop. And that came along during the pandemic, where we saw a lot of growth in the to-go movement, obviously, like
Yeah.
most people did. During the pandemic, all three of my restaurants survived, and we were able to employ a massive amount of people during the pandemic, and we sold a lot of pizza, and it was really, really great. And while it was terrible to not have guests in the restaurant, we were able to feed people in a way, and we were able to sustain people in a way. And I saw that as an opportunity for here in Bethesda, or for up in Bethesda, to say, hey, we have an opportunity to feed a new community with this product. Let's go for it.
It's amazing how the pizza community, pivoted during the pandemic in a way that maybe, set the standard for the whole restaurant industry, because, well, pizza was, to be able to, it's a good to go product, and it's something that you can
No
produce.
doubt.
And a lot of shops survive just simply by switching over to go. Some of them haven't even gone back. I mean, they're making more money in the to go model than in the.
Well, there's an argument to be made that the margins are definitely different.
Yeah,
when
yeah.
There's not as much overhead, but with AP Pizza Shop, it's just really fun, campy, kitschy, post-pandemic, age of convenience, tech savvy. Still the same high quality products. We do 18-inch pies during the day with slices for lunch.
Oh, so you do sell slices. You can buy a slice and not have to buy a whole pie.
Correct. So during lunch, we do the whole slices, and then 18-inch pies to go. And then at dinner, we're just doing 12-inch pies right now. So
interesting. So would you, how people love to put sort of a categorical name upon something. It sounds like what you're describing is kind of a New York pizza, but with a with a DC twist. I don't know. But it sounds like a New York style pizza if you were going to put it, or Neapolitan or something. I don't
we
know
like to call ourselves Jersey style pizza.
Jersey. There you go. And
yeah,
that's becoming actually a trademarkable term right now. Jersey style is a very hot phrase.
I'll take it. Hey, let's just say right here that I started it. How about that? That's easy.
Well, I'll tell you, we got a guy here in Charlotte where I am. We've had him on the show, Gino DiPaolo, and he's got a place called Gino D's Jersey style pizza right here.
I love it.
And so I asked him, what is it about it that why do you call it Jersey pizza? How's that different from New York pizza? And he says, I call it Jersey pizza because I'm from Jersey and I'm eating the pizzas. That's what makes it Jersey.
It's the same way. It's like when I went to BU and I was meeting people, they're like, where are you from? I'm from New Jersey, or from New York. And they're like, what part? I said, New Jersey.
Yeah. Because if BU, you're either from Jersey or you're from Long Island.
Oh, 100%. 100%. You took the words out of my mouth.
Well, that was a common joke even way back when I was there, was that, when somebody would say, well, so where are you from? And before they could even answer, you'd go go Long Island. I'm trying to think of there was one particular part of Long Island that everybody was from.
Oh, Long Neck.
Long Neck. That's it.
Yeah. It hasn't changed, brother. It hasn't changed.
That's so funny. I want to go back to something that's still in the back of my mind that I meant to talk to you about earlier. When you were at that stage where you started reading cookbooks, and you said that was kind of it kind of was a transitional period for you and inspired you.
Sure.
You remember some of the books that did it? What are some of the books that you would recommend?
I do. No, I do. I mean, these were books that my mother purchased. So just bear
Oh,
with me, right? So
yeah.
they were a little on the older side, but she also loved looking into newer stuff. So the Dean and DeLuca cookbook was one of the cookbooks on her shelf.
What was it again?
The Dean and DeLuca
Oh, Dean and
cookbook,
DeLuca. Yeah, yeah.
and that was just an encyclopedia of food
Sure.
that I
Yeah.
thought was so interesting. The Union Square Cafe cookbook was on there as well. Patrick O'Connell's In a Little Washington cookbook was on
Yeah.
there. And I remember the French Laundry cookbook was on there. And so all of those, like obviously the Dean and DeLuca and Union Square Cafe, if I remember correctly, very little pictures, if at all. But incredibly like depth oriented recipes and also vast, right? Like there were so
Yeah.
many different things. Like if you looked up, because my thing was always looking up in the index, like mushrooms. Like, I like mushrooms. And so all of a sudden you'd see 6 or 8 recipes with mushrooms and I'd go
Yeah.
through and be like, wow, that's really cool. Patrick O'Connell's book and Thomas Keller's books were all about the show. And so there were these two kind of things going on at the same time. And that show, from per se, I'm sorry, not per se, French Laundry
Yeah.
was gorgeous. And at the time in the early 2000s, I was like, what is this? This is amazing. And same with Patrick O'Connell's book it was a game changer. And these were 2 restaurants that, were probably the best in the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't know it at the time, but I just like the pretty pictures. And I was like, I want to do that. And
Did you
so
get to
that's
eat
kind
it?
of,
Have you? I'm sure you've gotten to eat it at some of those since, right?
I have not ever eaten at French Laundry. I have eaten at Per Se and Bouchon. I did work with Jose in California and went to Bouchon with him there. I had the pleasure of eating at the Inn Little Washington once and meeting Patrick multiple times.
How nice. Did you feel like when you finally got to some of those places that it lived up to your expectation?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a argument to be said about how it is theater. It is food is theater.
Yeah.
And so that was interesting for me as a guy that had been cooking for the masses for most of my career. So I enjoyed that process. I was able to go to Inn at Little Washington with my wife. So that was a great experience. And it was just super fun to see, a lot of the food that was in that book is still on the menu. So, and then at Per Se, I went at kind of its peak and just got to eat at the bar. I didn't get a table, but had a great experience and had some of the bites, and they gave us a kitchen tour, and it was magical stuff. Those are titans of the industry.
We had a couple of students at Johnson Wales when Per Se first opened, who during their spring break went up to New York City. Oh, I'm in Charlotte, so they took their sort of a break up there,
Sure.
and they got into Per Se, and they were smart. These were smart kids because Thomas was there that night. They introduced themselves to him. They told him that they were students, and then they made the big ask. And they said, "Is there any chance we could do an internship here?"
Oh,
And he said yes. And
that's awesome.
And so I think it showed that moxie that I think, and this comes back to now you being a restaurant owner, I want to get into before we run out of time, is,
Sure.
now how do people, you're now moving beyond just being a chef, you're being a mentor, you're being a restaurant owner and operator, and you talked about the educational side of it. What do you look for somebody who wants to come work for you?
Open to learning, first and foremost. A desire to learn, right? Versus a desire to show me what they know. I think that those things come in time. But every restaurant's different, right? There's 1,000 ways to cook an egg, as they say, and there's a certain amount of folds on a toque for a reason. I think that I look for passion. I look for the ability to handle criticism. I think it's really, look, I think that cooking is a craft more than an art. And I don't mean to discount the high-end chefs out there who are artists, I don't have that side of my brain doesn't work.
But you have to have the craft before you can get to the art.
Got to know how to roast a chicken, man.
Yeah.
Got to know how to, you got to know how to make poached eggs. I that's just who I am. I like to say, and this is a very broad statement, but in the world of chefs, you're either a plumber or a painter, and I'm a really good plumber. And I say that because there's an avenue and a process into how to build a dish. And let's even talk about pizza, for example. You need acid, fat, salt, and flavor, right? And to be able to balance those in a way to make a pizza delicious takes time and takes practice and takes craft, let alone how to build those ingredients properly prior to putting them together to make the sum more than its parts. So I look for people that are interested in learning that are interested in learning the craft of how to cook, and then how to cook on a volume level. And then when they get to a certain level and they reach that next level into maybe they're learning the management side. I love teaching the management side. I love teaching about COGS and how to order and how to organize and how to FIFO and how to do all the things that make a restaurant successful, reducing waste, building culture. And then from there, looking at a P&L, our qualitative versus quantitative costs. What do they mean? How do we control them? How do we get better so that people can hit their bonuses, right? Because at the end of the day, the work that we do in our company meets a quarterly bonus, which means you get to put money in your pocket if you do a good job, let alone a yearly review. So I look for people that are passionate about the industry. The hospitality business is just that. It's a business. And if you find people that are interested in doing that versus, let's say, the fame or like the rock star nature of it, it can be an incredibly rewarding experience.
You know, with your background and your training in some good restaurant groups and the work that you've put into creating an infrastructure, do you foresee growing your restaurant group along the lines of a Let Us Entertain You and having different concepts with different chef partners that can come in and have a piece of the action?
Yeah. Well, Peter, I just opened 2 restaurants at the same time 5 weeks ago. So it's not the best barometer of an answer, but I think that life is long and opportunities are many. And
you're still young.
And I'm 42. I've got 2 young daughters, 7 and 10, who I've loved watching grow up. And again, that company policy of work-life balance translates to me as well. And so obviously, apart from an opening of a restaurant where you work, I work as an owner, chef, 100-hour weeks until I feel like I'm comfortable with where we are, which I am now. And now I'm at 60 to 70-hour weeks, and then I'll get back to 40 to 50-hour weeks and I'll be just fine. But I would love to continue to grow. I think that the industry is changing and the way that people are spending their money is changing. And I think that we always have to be aware of that and adapt to it. And I think that as the industry has expanded, and I think that there's we could talk for hours about why the industry has gotten larger and better, but also diluted is based on technology and based on the ability to make money in other ways other than in the hospitality business itself. But people are spending their money wisely and differently, and there's also an immense amount of options out there. If you stand at AP Pizza Shop in Bethesda, Maryland, and you go on a third-party app, there's about 500 different places to order pizza in Montgomery County, Maryland. I can't imagine what it's like in Long Neck, New York. So I think we just have to be smart. I think that as a restaurant owner and as a chef, certainly I want to spread the love of my concept, my brand. I believe in the quality. I stand behind it. I think the deal has to be right. And I think that has another whole angle of how landlords are mapping out retail locations and how they build buildings and how long it should take, how much money it should cost. Are they putting TI into it, which is tenant, improvements? All of those different things factor in. Can you make a restaurant work? And I think that if you don't think about those things, you fail. Or you struggle to make even a small margin. And the goal for us is, as we continue to hire more people that are passionate and buy into the culture and make it a career for themselves, I have to grow to give them more opportunity. And that's what I see it. If I could, look, I'm so lucky in my life that I have even one successful business. That's how I feel. That's how I wake up every day. And part of that is knowing that my dad, passed away without that even having that opportunity.
Yeah.
And so for me to have that opportunity to surround myself with great people that want to buy into what we're trying to do, I've already made it. So everything else on top of that, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, and so on, is just icing. And if we can continue to make people happy and make people successful, that's just even better.
Well, it's great to have a dream and an aspiration, and to have been able to actually embark upon fulfilling that dream. And you're doing it. Congratulations on all your success. We didn't even get to talk about
Thank you.
Aventino, which is your kind
Yeah.
of tribute to the Aventine Hill in Rome, right? Which isn't that the hell that where the Jewish community was
Yeah.
essentially
So just
based?
real quick, Aventino, it is a Roman Italian restaurant. We're focused on the foods of the Eternal City. What does that mean? Because people are kind of confused. Kind of embodying the idea of cucina povera, or poor man's kitchen, which just
Uh-huh.
means taking a little and making a lot out of it. Examples would be Tonarelli cacio e pepe, pasta of cheese and black pepper,
Yeah.
um, rigatoni carbonara, amatriciana, all these different kind of uh, traditions of pasta and guanciale. There's a tradition of offal and quinto quarto, a tradition of chicories that give a health benefit to the digestive system, and utilizing great endives, tardivos, escarole, broccoli rabe, cooking with salumi, making our own mortadella, serving amazing prosciutto di Parma with buffalo mozzarella. The pizza tradition in Rome, right? We're just doing pizza rosa and pizza bianca right now as like
Right.
bread services in a really amazing recipe that Chef Gennaro Esposito has created with my culinary director Eric Rawlings. We've touched on pizza tonda, which we love, pizza Italia, which we love. I mean, I've been to Banchi multiple times. Wow. The tonda in Rome, again, super specific. Pizza, I love. There's a great pizza spot here in DC that does a really, really solid version of it. Love that story in general, that the guy's like, this is super ancient, but I mean, I don't think they were grinding rice and soy flours back then, but God bless them.
It's starting to get some traction, I think,
Yeah,
nationwide.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's not quite there yet, but it's a delicious type of bread. It's
Well,
very,
I know people who are working on rolling out cafes built around pizzas, which is
100%.
a different kind of pizza, but and that's
Yeah.
the cool thing about pizza, and that's why we love it so much. I'm coming up to the DC area in May to teach a class at Pizza University,
Oh,
which
cool.
you know,
Up in
hopefully
Maryland,
maybe when
right?
I get up there, I'll get a chance to come to one of the restaurants. I'm not sure which one we'll be able to break away to get to, but they
We
all
love
sound so good. I'm looking at the menus, on your websites, and they're all just your mouth starts watering. Just you can feel the passion and the love for what you're trying to create at each one. Even the
Thank you.
classic dishes, there's something about the way you're even presenting them. There's a connection. I think that's
Yeah.
one of my takeaways from our conversation today is the sense of how connected you are, to what you're doing and why you're doing it. And then
I
also I
appreciate it.
think, I think the other couple big takeaways for me was the structural aspect, how much you put into putting the pieces, building the structure properly, and then having a great partner, a business partner, which not we didn't even get to talk about today, but I think one of the keys to a successful business is having partners that can carry their share of the weight, and so it's not all on you.
No doubt. And I give much love as well. I have two other business partners, Gareth Croak and Colin McDonough, who Mike and I joined forces with when we went to open up AP because we needed help. And Gareth and Colin own a amazing pub around the corner from Red Hen called the Boundary Stone.
Ah,
And they opened up 2 years prior to Red Hen. So we were taking meetings and drinking pints of Guinness while going over the menu and the structure of Red Hen in
yeah.
their, and we got to be really good friends. And Mike lived down the street from them, and it became Mike's local pub. And so just amazing humans that shared the passion for pizza and for restaurants. They're Philly boys, so they have their own spots in Philly and South Jersey. And Mike's from Chicago, so he's a tavern pizza guy.
That's
So
right.
just a lot of different traditions rolling in. One thing I'll say about Aventino that I find really interesting is, again, growing up in Jersey and New York, in that Jewish and Italian cultures kind of were always synonymous in my upbringing and in my father's upbringing growing up in the Bronx.
Yeah.
And I feel like I was on a crash course with this concept because with those two cultures, they're two separate rivers that I see flowing down the same way, but the rivers never touch. I say this because like you never hear about these Jewish Italian connections, but for some reason, Lower East Side is sandwiched up next to Little Italy. In New York, if you're a tourist, what are the two things you have to have when you go there for the first time? A slice and a bagel.
Yeah, right.
In Rome, they touch in the Jewish ghetto. So there's some honoring that at Aventino with some of the foods of the Jewish ghetto in there.
For those folks who are listening that are in the DC area, what's the address of Aventino?
It's 4747 Bethesda Avenue, Bethesda, Maryland, 20832.
Okay, so that's in Bethesda.
20814, I apologize.
And of course, all of this information is available on the website. So just to reiterate, the restaurants include Aventino, AP Pizza, the Red Hen still going.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and 3 versions of AP.
And wow, so so it's growing, and you built the foundation itself is so solid, and it's spreading out and strong enough to be able to support these other concepts. Are you looking at doing anything in these other styles of pizza with the other guys you mentioned who have the pub?
I don't know. You know, we've always thought about it. I think that with AP, it's one of those things that when you talk about structurally, you know, I think us doing slices is like a big move for us from going from 12 inches to slices. So I think exploring other different pieces. Certainly, we've done for parties and stuff like that. We've done Sicilian pies that we absolutely love, and the light, fluffy crust. I mean, L&B spumoni might be my favorite bite of pizza ever. And again, we can talk about all the love I have for every pizza I've eaten all across the country, as I'm sure you have, and the pizzas that I loved in LA, Chicago, Philly, DC, Boston, even spots in Florida that are great, Chicago, and then obviously in Europe. But I'm pretty happy with the New York Jersey style right now. I think that creating a new dough would be a process in which I'd be willing to undertake when I find the time.
Yeah, and sometimes these things just, they happen when they happen. Sometimes maybe when you got an employee who you've had your eye on who, has leadership potential, who says, listen, I'd like to spin off and, can I work with you on doing a, tavern pizza place or something like that?
No doubt. Yeah. No doubt.
Well, I have no doubt that I will see lots of different iterations. Does your restaurant group have a name if people are trying to seek you out?
Yeah, it's called Red Stone Restaurants. Red
Stone Restaurants. Great.
Yeah, and that's the idea of Red Hen and Boundary Stone came together to form Red Stone.
Well, Chef Mike Friedman, thanks so much for sharing your life story with us, your journey, and
oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
I can't wait to come up and I'm not sure which one I want to go to first. I'm thinking Aventino, the menu just explodes off the page when I look at it. But
well, the best thing is when you come to Aventino, you can have a great dinner, and then I'll walk you over to AP Pizza Shop because they're
there connected. You go. So it's a twofer.
It's a twofer. There's nothing better than a twofer.
I'll take you up on that. Thanks so much for your time and for all the great work you're doing and for your success, and continue.
Thank you
to grow and thrive and prosper.
Long live pizza, man.
You got it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank all of you for joining us today on Pizza Quest. We'll see you at the next episode. Mike, see you in DC.
Looking forward to it. Cheers, guys.